go over. One of them is this technique here, which I'll kind of go over a little bit, but I'm going to emphasize a different style of painting mountains today. But this is Arnaud Almany. Pretty badass. You know, the middle ground hills, not really foreground or grass, but middle ground hills is pretty good. And background hills, I really don't know how many people can paint them that well. And so Elizabeth Mallory, she just kind of does like weird, you can't tell if those are trees or mountains off in the background. So with those, like this range here, and so what I was noticing is that my demos and those are kind of the same palette, so I wanted to show you different palettes of these things, so you can kind of see another way, another approach. And when you guys want demonstrations of how to paint things, if you bring up your references, tape them up here, and then I'll show you how to paint it. But otherwise, I just go to default and then the same color. So I have the same color mountains. But I put a heavier glaze of orange on it, so that allowed me to do the mountains. So references, write down Google search, probably like foothills. You can try different things, but if you're getting bad searches, only give it like 3 pages maximum. And then after the 3rd page, dude, you got to search something else. So you can do foothills, mountains, then you can do zones too. Like paintings of Sonoma County. A little piece of sandwich came out. Paintings of Napa County, but you might get the romantic vineyards and whatnot, which aren't all that great. Oil paintings, and then, but it's really tough to differentiate from good painters and mediocre. This one's pretty good, but there's only like 3 of them, so I'm not even going to give you her name. Oh, Karen. Okay, so I'm not going to give you Karen's name just because she has this one, and she has one other one, and then that's it. So write down photo reference for hills, and then painting reference for color interpretation and brushstrokes / your notes. So your notes are going to be pretty good. But it'll be pretty good. Okay. So then, this palette right here is the raw umber. And I go through phases in my magic shows because people want different things, and I look at the palettes. But I'm kind of getting into raw umber for my landscapes. I'm kind of liking it. I'm kind of a fan. So raw umber, a little bit of magenta or violet, and then cerulean blue, you can throw that in there. Burnt sienna, orange, whoa, burnt sienna. Burnt sienna saves lives in landscapes. And put that in there. So this is kind of like the palette. It's like, my God, it's a lot of paint. So, and the key is changing the color every time brush strokes or so. But write down the phases. Phase number 1, step number 1, you draw it out, map it out. So, and then when you draw it out, the ones that you got to avoid are like the butt crack mountains, like those. So you guys will find those all the time, Nathan Oda, whatnot, and you gotta paint like we're pros. Otherwise we don't serve the shirts. So this landscape right here, let me see, do I got a pen? Oh, nice. So here are the landscapes, you know, the hills you want to avoid. The giant round Nathan Oda, you want to avoid that one. And then here's another classic where you guys do a row of a systematic pattern of the horizon. Draw those out so you can write what not to do. It's also good to know what you shouldn't do. So that's the 1-point perspective. This is the easy Nathan Oda. I'm too lazy to get good reference kind of hill. And then you have the 2-point perspective, which is good. I like this pen. Sharpie. Alright, so then you can do a hill, and then you can do like multiple hills in front of hills. So write down this little phase, and this was kind of like that PowerPoint, so your background doesn't matter, So that's sort of this one. This one has multiple hills, layers of hills going in, and a different perspective, not this flat thing. So you don't want that flat horizon. Stay. Alright. So then, phase number 1 is to outline the hill. And even if your reference is smooth, like here, I'm going to do another one here. Okay, so this hill right here. So this is kind of an outline of the hill. And then when you're outlining the hill, you can tell the distance, write down background hills, or actually skip down. So background hills are going to be more pointy because they're higher up and they come together, tectonic plates, doing and creating a ridge, yada yada. So they're going to be more pointy. So if they're pointy, you're telling the viewer they're really big, really far away. If they're kind of like this and they have multiple bumps to them, then you're talking medium distance. So see this like this hoopty hill? And so a lot of you guys, we didn't talk about the structure of hills before. But these are further away. These are kind of like rolling foothills, which would be another good search, rolling foothills. Those are always good. And then rolling foothills, and then if it's up close, it's going to be one almost flat. That's telling you that we're really hella close. Like if you put these bumps up here in the foreground, it'll mess with the viewer's eyes. It's going to go, you're not going to know why, but it's going to look really weird. So you got to go pretty flat here. I mean, you can curve it or whatever, but you don't want this for the foreground. Back here, this works here, and then back there for the hill, a little more points and shadows. Okay. Write down brushes. Normally it's just going to be the bright brush. So I would stick with the bright brush. And with the background, you're going to also need to find one color palette. So write down, find one color palette for your mountains. And it should tie in. So write down interpretive skies need to use the same interpretive color for the hills. Naturalistic skies, like this is naturalistic because it's blue to smog. And so this is naturalistic, technically realistic interpretation of color. Then that can be anything from like the atmospheric blue to, if it's a green hill, if it's a valley, then it could be green or it could even be purplish brown. So that can be almost anything. But if you have like a Belisaric kind of like color interpretation, then those hills have to be the same way. So I'm going to mix up the purple, a little umber, and then I'll even put just a tiny bit of white in there. And the reason is I put a little white and black to make it gray. Because the white makes it more opaque, because brown sucks. Okay, so I'm going to do like one little edge, and I'll push the brush up into the line, and then come down here. I'm going to make a crappy hill first, and then I'll fix it. So this one, brush stroke, so now I'll feather it out. And so you notice that brown is kind of a tough color to cover, because you'll put it on there and you get the streaks of the white canvas showing through, and you're like, ah, crap. Okay. So this, oh, mother F. I got warrior paint. So this is like the teepee kind of thing. So also write down adding little nooks and crannies and extra hoopties to the hill. Even if your reference looks simple like this, add. So you want to add, watch this, I'll do another little hill, and then I'll do another little hoopty hill, jiggity, and then I'll jag it down, and then up with another jig. Jig and jags. So that way it doesn't just go up and then back down again. Paint? Or the jiggity jags?
No, this is jiggity jags.
That's a vocabulary test. So I like to use art terms so you can understand them later. So yeah, so this is kind of like monkeys and jimmies in the eyes, only this is jiggities and jags on the hill. So, and then the other thing is combining mountain ranges. Like you guys think if you go up, you have to come all the way back down again before you go back up, and so you get this like tooth kind of thing with the hill. You get that. But instead you can go down a little bit, oh, and then go back up again. So kind of like this, combine those things. Okay, so that's a reference here. So brushstroke, write down brushstrokes need to follow the contours of the mountain you're painting. In other words, so if this is a ravine coming in here, this needs to be going this direction down the hill, and you're going to be following your reference for your brushstrokes. Like, which way do I go? Just follow your brushstrokes based on which way the direction of the mountain is going. And then you can add more mountains in front of the old mountains. Okay, so then, for these things, like the foreground, after you do a base coat, so write down the base coat should be a neutral tone, not the darkest value, not the lightest value. I get some little tones in there. So I'm going up, following the directions, and then I'll start adding highlights here in a second. Okay, and then the same thing with the structure on the bottom. I'll even use a bigger break, which you guys don't have. So this one, I'm going to take the brown, a little violet, I'll even throw in some orange, I'm feeling silly. I'll throw in a little burnt sienna, and black. Okay, that's extreme. So then I'm going to throw these in for like the base coat, and then I'll start lightening up by adding a tiny bit of white, but white can get kind of deadly because it can end up looking kind of gray and murky. So people, Don't really want to put too much white on there. So if you add white, if you want highlights, I recommend, adding yellow ochre works good for highlights because it's a lighter color and that'll kind of work. And I'm going to show you how to block out some of these hills. Using a bright brush, I'm following the direction. Don't do this. This is how you guys all paint. I have no idea why. What is that? It's like a pre-high school training camp for brush strokes. You guys go like that. Don't do that. It looks horrible. So even if you just take this thing and change color every 10 brush strokes, you're going to start getting some contours on there that'll look pretty good. And so you're going to go sideways. You can go this direction, diagonal, but you can go like skinny to wide to skinny again. And then each time you do like a little bit of a highlight, it'll turn out looking like a ravine. So I'm going to do some highlights. A little purple, a little burnt sienna, a little yellow ochre. Mush it all around. And that'll get me sort of like, and I'll start to get some highlight color in there. And so you start with the neutral tone. Now I'm adding a little bit more of the highlight color. And then these colors in here, so right here I'm saying this is going to be a little bit higher. And then what you guys like to do is start off with the highlight, and they get darker and darker and darker, and then another mountain. So add in the textures. So you can add in like an extra hill, just another highlight, and small color. Change color like every so many seconds, because you don't want like puddles of color. And then I'm going to link these together. My brush is shedding. I hate the shedding brushes. I need some new ones. Okay, so I'm starting to get the contours in there. You can kind of see like this hill comes up, then another little rise over here, another rise over there, and a little burnt sienna and orange. And I keep changing the highlight colors, so then it'll look like a little bit more of a variety, and I'm taking the brush, doing side-to-side brush strokes, and then now all of a sudden this is going to be like a flat plane, but you don't want like one large brush stroke like that, then it looks too systematic. So then I'm going to come back in, small brush, and tap this in. And then the trees I'll put in later. So right now you have no idea the scale. So it's like, is this going to be really far away, or just like a flat meadow? And so to differentiate the scale, you can put like a large tree here, medium tree here, write down, paint trees, shrubs and whatnot to establish scale. Trees and shrubs for scale. And then now I'm adding a little bit more of the purple and brown, even though I like the color this is already. I'm going to warm it up with a little more orange and purple. And I'll start putting that in there. And then the hills will start coming together once you put the highlights in there. So then for the highlight, could add a little more white to the orange and violet. But look how many brush strokes there are. There's tons of them. You guys are going way too simple with your mountains. Like you can see all the contours and shapes in there, and it makes it look a lot better, a little stronger. Bip up bip. And then you gotta kind of wait for each layer to dry before you do like more of the highlights. Otherwise, this is kind of blending in almost too much. But then I'll show you guys later, so you can see the structure in there. But don't do this row of hills. You can see how these kind of ramp up. So I'll keep painting on this so you guys can kind of see how it goes. But and also note that when you're painting hills, start with the background mountains first. Work your way forward. So with these mountains, these are further away. I'm going to add in, watch these little highlights I'll put in. So this is just a flat clip art kind of thing. And then in here, I'm going to add in, if I do that little L shape, and then I can kind of feather it out so it blends into the foreground, it'll look a little bit better, a little stronger. So I got the highlights on there now. So just by adding those weird little shapes, they're like patterns and like bold brush strokes, like you don't need to have all smooth blends. And I'll add another little highlight in here. Boop. Then all of a sudden I got an extra little hoopty. I'll do the same thing here. This has like a base coat on it. And then I'll add a little more of the orange and white. But all the layers of paint you put on here, and then as it comes forward, I can have more contrast. So also note that. further back the mountains, the less contrast. So you're going to have a difference of only a few values. In the foreground mountains, you can have a lot more contrast. So some of you guys will paint mountains, and they look good, but it's kind of weird. Something's wrong with them. You don't know what it is. It might be because you have too much contrast on those background hills. Although too much contrast sounds kind of silly, but is that even possible? So you can kind of see how I'm adding in the highlights on top of the purple, and they're not really, this isn't realistic, like it's painterly, but I'm blocking out basic shapes, and so your brain will make this look good when you put in some badass trees. So it's kind of like you put in a few of these shapes, and then you put trees in front of them, and these things start coming to life here a little bit. But look at the patterns and shapes though, they're not like the simple ones. You can even like take this, I'll show you another, I'll add this, make this hill look like it's in front of it, by having a peak here, and having a second mountain kind of coming off of that one. So write down, add character to your mountains, don't simplify them. So like this one, this shape doesn't exist here. Well, kind of, a little bit, not much. But I'm exaggerating the shape, so you can imagine taking a, motorcycle, going up to saying, and then you would stall up here too freaking steep. You have to go all the way around here and then come back up. So you can make a mountain that you could possibly hike up. Like find yourself a little path before you walled up. Alright, so that's a basic step for structure, and I'll show you guys more trees and what have you later. So that's the mountains in a nutshell. Brown.